Good evening. No. That's what Hitchcock used to say. Isn't that amazing? Hitchcock was a horror host.
Yeah.
He wore all the hats he wears. He was a he was a vampira.
Now, did that come before or after his films?
During.
He did a show while he was...
Yeah, and it was like Twilight Zone, but more in the crime genre. More like, it was like his movies, but condensed into a half-hour show. Ever since he gained prominence, like it seems like every decade or every few years, there's a new director where they say, this is the new Hitchcock." It's like, well, are they a horror host? Is this the worst idea I've ever had? Is this like the most boring thing that we could possibly do? Andy Kaufman would read Great Gatsby to his audience.
Yes.
Like it's not going to be like that though. Because this isn't random. It's just going to be very specific. All right. So here's the deal. For this segment, we are doing issue number 122 from May of 1993. Julian Sands on the cover from Warlock 2. Excuse me, Warlock the Armageddon, which has nothing to do with Warlock 1.
Yes.
Completely abandoned what happened. Not a very exciting cover.
What are you talking about? He has like black blood coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, but no one gives a shit about Warlock.
Are you serious?
But if you'll notice in the their famous sprocketed sidebar, Nightmare 7, Jason Goes to Hell, Return of the Living Dead 3, Witchboard 2, and Subspecies 2. This is a special issue. They were all special issues. Over 50 frightful sequels. In this issue, they have an article on page 34, Shocker Sequel Checklist. We'll put that up on Still Store. You name it. If it's a recent genre film, it's probably got a frightful follow-up on the way. So this is their list of things that are being talked about, or they're in pre-production, or they're in production, or they're probably coming out in a few months. And the wonderful thing about this is that, while some of them, they were on their way, and a lot of these were a decade away, or just completely went away. It's in alphabetical order. So the first one, Addams Family 2. Roman numeral 2. First thing right off the bat, they say, actually, we hope this comes out under its provisional title, Addams Family Values. So it was close. It was that close, but they weren't completely privy to all the details yet. Paramount brings back the creepy, kooky family along with director Barry Sonnenfeld and the original film's cast. Paul Rudnick, who did uncredited rewrites on the first film, scripts the story of the search for a guardian to take care of Adam's baby Pubert. All the details are in there. And Hand That Rocks the Cradle type nanny from hell, Joan Cusack, responds. So this was already just about done, right? Just didn't have the title yet. They were throwing around as a joke. They call it Addams Family Values. And they went with it. So, thank you very much, Fangoria. That's easy. That's boring. Next up is Alien vs. Predator. Fox's franchise monsters may do battle in a joint follow-up. A script exists, but no start date has been announced. Rumors vary as to whether the project will be based on the popular Dark Horse comics of the same title. That's the only information they give. This is 1993. Had it been as close as they had predicted, would it have been better?
Probably. It wouldn't have been directed by Paul W.S. Anderson.
Well, you know what would have happened? It would have been called Alien versus Predator. That's a different movie than AVP. I feel like AVP has a very specific aesthetic and story, and I'm glad that people refer to it as AVP. Because when you see the words alien and predator that close together, you deserve magic. You deserve what you're picturing in your head.
I immediately pictured the toy. The coveted toy,
The toy.
that
was
I almost fucking bought a week ago that I didn't.
Based on the Dark Horse comic.
Yes.
That's what that derives from.
That movie needs to exist. And that's when it should have been made.
Alien versus Predator. You know, they could do it again and call it Alien versus Predator instead of AVP.
Yes.
In that embossed Terminator 2 metal font.
But they're not going to, because every fucking action movie these days surrounding a monster has to have some horrendous backstory involving a kid and, you know, and having some melodrama, and I don't know, it's just, there's just so little monsters in these new monster movies. Look at the Godzilla movies, or the new Predator. Was that Shane Black? What a
Black?
What a turd that was. The autistic kid saved us all.
Amityville 1993, The Image of Evil.
I don't know if I've ever seen it.
You don't know that one?
No.
All right. We're on our way. Well, Vinegar Syndrome has a box set of all the, what do they call it?
1 through 3 is
It's
what we're
everything.
getting
It's
from
everything.
Amazon.
It's not everything after 3. It's after 3 up to a certain date. There's actually a more recent one from a couple of years back that I don't think it has.
It doesn't have, what is it, Ryan Reynolds? There's no Ryan Reynolds in that one?
It doesn't have that one. No, and there was a brand new one a couple of years back. Another sequel. That doesn't include that.
That's okay. I really just wanted the goofy.
There's in the 90s, from like 89 to something, the end of the 90s. Beyond Reanimator, that happened. That was an easy one. The Birds 2.
Isn't there a Birds 2?
Showtime plans to produce and air the sequel to Alfred Hitchcock's terror classic this year. I think I saw it.
I think I did too.
Why?
I don't think I saw it on Showtime though. I don't think I had Showtime.
But I'm sure it's been floating around ever since. I mean, it exists.
I think it was a TV movie though.
Yes, no, it was. Yeah, it was Showtime. No, that's true. It was. Huh. It was. My mom insisted on watching it but it was. I wouldn't say it was. It wasn't like Birdemic, but it was certainly sci-fi movie before there were sci-fi channel movies. It's like TV horror movies. Any book that Stephen King was writing or had written that hadn't been turned into something was a TV movie.
Yes. Oh, all his books are 3,000 pages, and we can't condense it all into a feature-length theatrical release, so we're going to release it in 2-hour segments on the TV.
Exactly. So this is the big one. I should have saved this for last.
We're going in alphabetical order.
We are going in alphabetical order. All right. Bram Stoker's Dracula sequel. Few details were available at time of this writing, but Francis Ford Coppola and Columbia Pictures are definitely re-teaming for follow-up to last year's high-grossing horror epic. Recently knighted Sir Anthony Hopkins is the only confirmed returnee from the original cast.
So it was going to be like a Van Helsing?
Because it was going to be Van Helsing.
Oh!
If there was one, Dracula's dead. So if you had to pick one character from that movie who could carry his own movie,
and the actor to portray his character,
it was so tough when that came out, because I saw them both fresh. I didn't see them after the fact. I saw Silence of the Lambs, and then I saw Dracula, and just like everyone else, and so everyone else saw that, and that was like sort of the first time I was like, because even though Anthony Hopkins had been around for like over a decade. Everyone was like, "Oh, Hannibal Lecter is in a movie, but he's not Hannibal Lecter. He's got like a good guy, and he's doing something." And I was sort of in that boat a little bit. So it kind of blurred me to the idea when you watch it now and just sort of aware of him now, and it's like he was really doing something special and weird in this movie, and not a lot of people talk about it because there's so much because everyone talks about like how great Gary Oldman is, or how much they don't like Keanu in it, or some other
I don't
thing.
want to hear any more from anybody about Keanu's performance in that.
We're in the Keanu sense now, so nobody talks bad about Keanu anymore.
No, and if you look at that movie though, his character is a schmo. He is a fucking douchebag schmo. Whatever.
Jonathan Harker is underwritten. Blame it on Bram Stoker.
Yeah, I mean, no, he was fine. He was completely fine.
I know he was. I never had a problem with him.
No, me neither, ever.
Yes, in our minds, like every spin-off or reboot or sequel, we have an idea of how great this would clearly be. Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing in Van Helsing the movie. Because he was a defective detective. He was a Columbo. He was flawed and schlubby and loved to eat and drink and he was the only character in that movie that knew what the fuck was going on at any given time.
He also kept his fucking cool.
Yeah,
he never got upset or tense, or he was just like, "We got this. Just do what I say, and we got this."
Outside of the novel, there's been a ton of Van Helsings before and since, but this interpretation of him is like my favorite kind of character in any movie, where they're smarter than everyone else and they kind of don't give a shit. Those are the two like most attractive qualities of a main character in fiction that I am drawn to, I think.
Well, that describes you.
But like anything else, let's be honest. If they had made it, something would have been wrong. Something would have gone wrong.
It couldn't have possibly lived up to Dracula.
Well, it couldn't have possibly lived up to Dracula, or even just the ideas of what you had in your head. For a decade, everyone was biting their nails about a sequel to Silence of the Lambs. Teasing us with it for 10 years about, you need a novel first, and is Thomas Harris going to write a novel? And I remember years and years went by, and then the first news broke that yes, he was writing a sequel to Silence of the Lambs called Morbidity of the Soul. That was the working title to the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. And while that is one of the worst jumble of words, while that is the worst title I've ever heard in my life, I still remember it. So it's memorable. You got to give it that. That aside, so he writes Hannibal, and then Hannibal gets made into a movie, and everything's fucking wrong. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a sequel to Silence of the Lambs. It's its own thing. You can like it for this and for that, but as a sequel to Lambs, forget it. And so, call it sour grapes, but I think that's what any sequel to Dracula would have been. Is that cynical?
No, realistic.
I think we would have still loved Dracula and be like, oh yeah, and there was a sequel that we don't really care that much for. Candyman 2. Yeah. And then some. Cast a Deadly Spell 2. Does that mean anything to you?
Nothing.
Yeah, we can skip over that one. Creepshow 3. I'm aware of this one. There was one, wasn't there, that no one saw many years later, right? Sorry if that's wrong, but who gives a shit?
Yeah.
But here's what they say. Although it's been in development for some time at Laurel Entertainment, this project is still seeking financial backing.
And why? Was anthology horror in the toilet in the early 90s?
Who the fuck knows? This was the 90s.
There was no horror in the 90s.
90s was such a limbo, a beautiful limbo, and I loved it because it was
beautiful.
I thought it was right up until Scream.
I was just gonna say that.
Before
and everybody
Scream.
Was like, "Oh, all hail Wes Craven for saving horror with Scream."
Oh, yeah.
Which I will still praise the first 5 minutes of. It's still one of the greatest horror of all time with his Drew Barrymore sequence. The rest of the movie is absolutely horrendous.
I agree, absolutely. Well, it's like the aliens blowing up cities in Independence Day.
Yeah.
Like, can't we just have this little piece?
That should have been just a short film.
That's what I'm saying.
Effective, horrifying, well acted, well directed even. I would say he even directed it well. It was great. And then I was like, what the hell is this shit?
Drew Barrymore was offered Nev's role, and Drew said, no, I like this part more.
Good girl.
Darkman sequels. It just lists sequels. As in, we're just going to keep making this shit. And why would Sam Raimi back out of that? Stick with Spider-Man over Darkman. Well, Dollman versus Demonic Toys. Oh, I'm so glad that one happened.
I don't care for Dollman.
Did you care for Demonic Toys? This one's great because this, just like Van Helsing, they mention this in many issues around this time. Flies. Listen to this. The second sequel to The Fly will ignore the events of The Fly 2, according to writer Richard Jeffries. Quote, let's call it an alternate future, he says of his script, which picks up where the first film left off. Veronica, Gina Davis's character from the original, goes through with her pregnancy and gives birth to twin boys. They appear normal, but with the onset of puberty, their bodies begin to change. Unlike the first sequel, this project brings back the original's female lead. Gina Davis is attached, Jeffrey confirms. In fact, it was her story. Brooks Films is producing in association with her company Genial Pictures for 20th Century Fox release. It's a sequel to a successful movie and features a rising female star, so they want to make it as soon as possible.
Easter never goes away.
Glass Shadow, a sequel to Cyborg. I have nothing to say about any of what I just said. Grim Prairie Tales, Rescue Party. Anything?
Nope.
Halloween 6. Executive producer Mustafa Akkad has a few people working on the script. He wants to make sure it's really good, blah blah blah. Might not be ready for 93. No director has been announced, blah blah blah. You know who wanted to make Halloween 6? Quentin fucking Tarantino wanted to make Halloween 6.
Nothing's stopping him from making a Halloween
They were
movie.
like, nah. The fact that he didn't get the chance to make Halloween 6, which, I'm sorry, is not only the worst Halloween movie made, but maybe the worst movie ever made. I don't say that lightly. I've seen a couple of movies, and I've seen some movies that I didn't really care for. That's way, way down there.
I wanted to see Halloween 6 like so bad, just because I've been an enormous Halloween fan my entire life, and it was in a unanimous vote. I lost. I was the only one who voted for Halloween 6. So we didn't see it opening night. We saw it the week after. But instead of Halloween 6, I saw 7. And I'm still to this day, after 25 years, so grateful that I was outvoted that night and saw 7 as a little kid.
So instead
12,
of seeing one of the worst
11.
horror movies of the 90s, you saw one of the best horror movies of the 90s.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, Hellraiser 4. Hellraiser IV.
Don't you care for that?
I do care for that. Hellraiser 1 through 4. Nice and perfect. Everything else, just put aside. It makes it so much easier. All right, but have you? I know you've seen 5. We watched it together.
Yes.
But you've never seen 6, 7, 8,
No.
9.
No, none of them.
Okay, so maybe if you did, you might feel differently.
No.
Okay.
Just because those are awful doesn't elevate number 4. I still don't like
it. I think it would.
It's like, oh, these are really bad. So I guess 4 isn't
No,
as
no,
bad
no, no.
as I
It's not.
think.
It's not. No, it's not like that. No, it's not a comparative. No, I'm not saying it's a comparative thing. I'm just saying that you remember 4 had a lot to do with the backstory of the box. There's none of that in any of the other ones. There are no Cenobites or Pinhead or the box or any of that stuff. So at least as a cohesive narrative, like as a story, to sort of end it with the story of the construction of the box through the ages, it might not be the best ending to a story, but it is the ending to a story. And I actually do like the movie, and I like the Cenobites that they come up with in that movie, and I like all the other stuff, and obviously Kim Myers is in it. So, but as a 1 through as a series, it begins and ends. The Hidden 2. We haven't seen The Hidden 1. And we're supposed to, because everyone loves it. Hills Have Eyes 3. That happened, didn't it? Did that happen?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oft announced in years past, this project looks likely to get off the ground this year. Original writer-director Wes Craven is executive producing. That means shit. Why am I? I don't care. Who gives a shit? Howling 7. You know what's funny?
Howling 7? How many of those movies
There's a
are
lot.
there?
There's a lot. There's more than
Why?
7. There's more than 7.
Like Howling, which is horrible to say because I love Joe Dante, but
Don't like the Howling 1.
and I love werewolves.
I like the I like the Howling 3 because it's crazy. None other than Joe Bob Briggs. He says no one ever talks about Howling 7. He likes Howling 7. I don't know how you'd go about finding this. Maybe it's, who knows, maybe there's some special edition blah blah somewhere. Humanoids from the Deep 2. Lawnmower Man 2. That happened. Night of the Demons 2. That happened.
You don't have that.
Do you know it? Do you like it?
I've seen it. I think it has a lot to do with the lipstick that she puts in her boob. I think that it's haunted, her lipstick. Her boob lipstick.
We're using that gag as a plot device?
I think so. I'm like
I'm
almost
already turned off.
sure.
I asked you if you liked it, and when you ask somebody if they like something and their answer is, I've seen it, I'm already like, Nightmare on Elm Street 7. Wait a minute. Freddy's dead. That's the first line. Freddy was dead anyway, says Wes Craven. It was returning to the New Line film series that made him famous. I'm writing the script now and I'll be directing, but I have the option to do another film before this one. I didn't ask you for your life story. Why are you giving us this information? Freddy will be involved and Robert Englund has agreed to come back. We are devising a sufficiently acceptable way within the mythology for Freddy to return. You know, I love this movie, but what a goofy fucking way to describe that. I would, is this a good this isn't, you know what, I'm still gonna save it about reasons why I don't like Wes. People have been on my ass for a decade now about why I don't like Wes Craven, even though he invented my favorite movie monster. I'll save it. We're gonna have to talk about New Nightmare. I've talked about New Nightmare all the time. I love New Nightmare. That's why I talk about it all the time. So we don't have to really go on about that, right?
No.
Phantasm 3, well, that certainly happened, and then some. Piranha 3, that didn't happen, did it? Well, I mean, it happened in the past 10 years, it happened.
Yeah, wasn't there Piranha 3D?
Piranha 3D.
Didn't that have Gianna
Michaels,
Michaels
who officially a Scream Queen now.
And you immediately recognized her?
Well, go figure. I thought you were gonna say that they had Richard Dreyfuss as Hooper and killed off Hooper. How did we get here? Why are we talking about Piranha 3D? Here's what they say. They say though, plan to get a third entry off the ground this year. No director, cast, or plot details were available at press time.
So someone had an idea.
Someone said, and hey, let's write about it. You know, I was gonna bring up Richard Dreyfuss. You brought up Gianna. So really, who's the Bang Bros fanatic between us?
We both have boobs and porn in our minds.
Because of the really interesting thing that happened.
That immediately, the girl that was topless in the parachute or the
See, yeah, you're right. I saw it once. It was
fuck you.
Psycho Cop 2. Psycho Cop. Dum, 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 dum. Wow.
Actually, I do know Psycho Cop. Isn't he in the media right now for killing some poor black guy for writing a fraudulent check?
Is he a psycho or just a prick? Pumpkinhead 2. There was
that had Punky Brewster in it.
That had Punky Brewster in it. And then there was more after that, too. So that's not any big surprise. Puppetmaster 4. God.
There's like 20 of those.
Oh, man.
From the person, I don't even want to speak, but I just want to say, from the person who's probably more afraid of living dolls than any human alive, those are boring as shit and do not scare me at all.
The best way the Friday the 13th series works is that if you watch them all, if you watch them all together, if you marathon them or binge them, but you keep watching Puppet Masters and you realize you feel like you've aged 20 years, like my life is just being obliterated before my eyes, and they're not getting any better, they're not going anywhere. I can't waste my time talking about Puppet Master. It fucking sucks. RoboCop 3, I like RoboCop 3. It's the only RoboCop I actually kind of like, which makes me very sad because You know, I could do a list of movies that I wish I liked more, not because they're popular or not because I had high hopes for them, but just because they have everything that I otherwise would enjoy or would like. And RoboCop is somewhere in like the top 3 of that list. The frustrating thing is that I don't dislike it, I just can't make the connection.
Right.
But I like RoboCop 3. Scanner Cop.
Is that like Scanners?
Yeah, no, yeah, it is. It's Scanners 4. And I will say that kind of like Friday the 13th. Those just kind of got better and better and better and better as they went on. And if you go back down to the first one really isn't that good.
Okay.
Prestigious writer-director be damned. Because, I don't give a fuck about David. Scanner Cop was good. Oh, I think I must have written something about David at some point. I got a lot to say about David, and
he's very creative.
There's a lot of creative people, a lot of creative artists out there who are not necessarily filmmakers. You know what? That'll be a good topic for another one of these.
David
because they interviewed him every other day in the early 80s. So maybe that would be another good topic for issue whatever. Sleepaway Camp 4, The Survivor. Well, they already got a subtitle, so clearly that was already in the works. Continued on page 71.
I always hated when they continued into the black and white.
We take you there now live. I agree. And here it is. Not as exciting as the color pictures. Here's a mouthful. Try to say this. Tales from the Dark Side, the movie 2. I've read about this. This was so close to being made. So close. Because it was written out. The script was written. The stories were there. They had Stephen King and Romero and everyone was fucking... They were all in. Like Creepshow 3... in active development, but with no production commitment as of yet. Just didn't happen. Maybe for the best, because that title sucks. I mean, even the title from the movie, Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, sucks. It's called Tales from the Dark Side. The weird thing is, it's once, twice, 3, 4 times removed. Tales from the Dark Side, the show, is Creepshow, the show. They didn't call it Creepshow for whatever reason, I can't remember, so they call it Tales from the Dark Side. But they say, like, hey, let's turn Creepshow into a TV show. Oh, but we can't call it Creepshow, so we're going to call it Tales from the Dark Side. And so Tales from the Dark Side is Creepshow. The end. Even more than that, to boost the ratings of Tales from the Dark Side, they said, let's keep making Tales from the Dark Side, but to make it more popular, we'll give it a different title so people think it's a new show, and they'll start watching the new show. So they called it Monsters. So there's this new show called Monsters, which is actually Tales from the Dark Side, which Tales from the Dark Side is actually Creepshow. So Monsters is actually Creepshow part whatever, the TV show. Let's just face it, we like anthology horror, and it worked really well in TV format, because TV format is not really anthology horror, it's episodic horror, which is like anthology horror, but except it has a million billion fucking segments to it. It's almost as if someone said, let's turn Twilight Zone the movie into a show. And just call it Twilight Zone. Trancers 4, Journeys Through the Dark Zone. We stopped at 3. Yeah? 1 and 2 are solid, I think. Trancers 1 is a Christmas movie and a Chinese food movie. Mm-hmm. If you need a Chinese food movie or a Christmas movie, Trancers. The Unborn 2, Born Again.
I think I've seen that.
You've seen the Unborn? Or the Unborn 2?
I think I've seen him.
When a Stranger Calls Back.
You love that.
I love that. Carol Kane, Charles Durning, and writer-director Fred Walton return for this long-in-coming continuation of the 1979 hit. The storyline centers on Julia, played by Jill Sholin, a college student plagued by a mysterious tormentor who once terrorized her when she was babysitting. The opening scene of that movie, where she is tormented, is one of the most suspenseful, well-written scenes in all movies that I've ever seen. And we put it on as a whim. And and so rarely do I watch like suspense movies where I'm just like tense. Like what's gonna happen? Like it was so well written. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it because no one's fucking seen it. It's on Scream Factory. When a Stranger Calls Back, which is just When a Stranger Calls Part 2 with Carol Kane on the cover. But I can just describe that the opening scene of the movie is Jill Schoelen is babysitting, and she's on one side of the door, and there's a guy on the other side of the door trying to convince her to open the door so he can use the phone. You take that premise, and as a screenwriter, you try to write dialogue. You have to suddenly be both characters. You have to be as suspicious as she is, as we are, as the audience is. Like, no way, absolutely not. But then, as a screenwriter, you have to be as absolutely convincing as the guy on the other side of the door is. Like, how do I convince her and the audience to open this fucking door for me? And what can I say to make her open the door? And they did it. They did it on both sides, so balanced. And the fact that both sides are so balanced, where it's like, no way, and it's like pushing that doubt in, like, well, maybe I should open the door, because it's so convincing. That's great screenwriting. That was great acting. Everything about it was just great. The rest of the movie, just like the original When a Stranger Calls, is like, like when Carol Kane's on the phone with and all that famous stuff, and then all the crap that happens after that nobody really cares about, and that I was completely disappointed with. But that opening scene was just like, wow. Like, Witchboard 3. Kevin Tenney? Walter Jostin will produce. Oh, thank God. That happened. That actually happened. I think there were exactly 3 Witchboard movies. And then I think that was the end. I didn't know it was Kevin Tenney, though. Witchcraft 5. Or Witchcraft V.
Those all had erotic covers, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, anything with witch something. Well, witch, first of all, you got a female lead, so let's see some cleavage, huh?
I feel like at the local video store, they were always facing out, and they were always busty girls.
Of course they were.
Sitting over a flaming pentagram.
To the best of my knowledge, there are close to 20 witchcraft movies. It's in the high teens. I haven't seen a single one of them. I think they were all direct to video, and I've yet to rent any of them. Because, COVID. Witchcraft? Not witchboard, witchcraft.
Yeah, witchcraft. I wouldn't be able to slip the booby movie past my mom.
Well,
She would have called me out on being gay.
You've had over a dozen chances. When the audience is telling you they like witchcraft and erotic horror, you want to give them what they want. There's only so many you could release to get maximum penetration to the market. Oh, there's a double entendre there. But I feel you could release one every 3 or 4 months. The video market could certainly absorb it. What a time to be alive. We were alive. What am I talking about?
What was your first porn you ever owned?
First porn I ever owned?
Tangible.
Movie. Not something I taped off a TV?
Yeah.
There was a kid I went to high school with who owned... I don't remember a complete story behind it, so I'm sort of filling in the gaps, much like the Jurassic Park DNA. I think his father owned a video store that closed down and got rid of everything, and so the trunk of his car was filled with porno VHS tapes, and I didn't believe it at first. I'm like, really? He was like, yeah, you want some? It's like, yeah. And as I walked to his fucking car, I still didn't believe it until he opened his trunk, and his trunk was just black plastic rectangles of fucking pornos with no covers. It was the weirdest shit I've ever seen. And I just picked out 2 with no discretion at all. And I picked out a movie called Asinine and DP Man, starring Jonathan Morgan as DP Man. DP Man 2, excuse me. And DP Man was some sort of Frankenstein type guy. He wasn't Frankenstein in any other way. He was a normal human, except he had 2 dicks. That's why he was DP Man. So he could DP you, but he was one man. So that was Asinine and DP Man 2. I believe it was 2.
Muffy the Vampire Slayer.
Muffy the Vampire Slayer?
Yes.
That was Triple X?
Yes.
Was it lesbian mostly?
Yeah.
Good. Now, did they line up? I mean, did they try to match the characters at least if physically?
As best they could.
As best they could.
Yeah.
So there was a Willow.
Yeah.
Make no mistake, he must be stopped.